Hello and welcome to our first episode of Habits and Healthspan, an Amway podcast. We're so glad that you're joining us. My name is Alyssa, and I'm here with my co-host, John. Hello, John.
Hey, Alyssa, how you doing?
Real good. I'm real excited to learn about all things Healthspan. Before we get into sort of what that actually means, John, tell us a little bit. We talked in our intro about why this is important to you, but maybe for those who haven't heard that, tell us a little bit about why you're interested in Healthspan.
I'd love to. You know, Alyssa, I'm thinking about all the different people who might be listening at home. And the ones that I feel like I relate to are the people that maybe in their teens and 20s were not thinking about health really at all. Okay, I've always lived an active lifestyle. As I shared, I have a lot of different interests. I'm an amateur runner. I love rock climbing, boxing. If it involves movement and adventure, I'm sold. And now as I'm getting a little bit older, I'm approaching 30, I'm starting to do what a lot of people do when they reach that age. And they're thinking, how do I sustain this? What do I want the next step to look like rather? I'm really interested in learning about a lot of the topics that are coming up. You know, on this journey of 1,000 steps, we're going to be tackling metabolic health, gut health, skin health, so many other amazing topics. And I am just so excited to take that first step here today. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Yeah, so I think I've always been somewhat interested in health generally, but I hit 40 this year, so I'm a little bit further down the road. And all of a sudden, the things that worked for me in my 20s and 30s, they don't work the same way anymore. So I'm sort of approaching health with a new perspective of, I really want to know a little bit more about what's actually going on. And I also have 3 kids and a husband who, whether they like it or not, will be learning along with me because I'm passionate about setting up at least my kids for sure with habits that hopefully they can stick to when they're an adult.
Absolutely. So for all of you listening at home, wherever you are at in your Healthspan journey, whether you're a seasoned pro or an absolute novice like myself, we are super thrilled to have you along for the ride. But we are not the only ones here today. We have some incredible people joining us to help educate us in this first episode about what is Healthspan. What are we talking about?
Yes. Today we have with us Dr. Paul Seehra. He's the Vice President of Nutrition, Research, and Development at Amway. Welcome, Dr. Seehra.
Thank you. I'm so happy to kind of be here with you guys and share a little bit about what we know and what our experts have taught us over the years.
I love it. Great. And we also have with us Dr. David Furman. He's the director of the Stanford 1000 Immunomes Project, chief of Artificial Intelligence Platform, and associate professor, Buck Institute for Research on Aging. Welcome, Dr. Furman. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me here.
So, Dr. Furman, this entire episode is about Healthspan. Now, the whole podcast is going to be about Healthspan, but today we're really setting up the ladder that'll take us to these other topics. So let's just start with the basics. Can you define for us what is Healthspan?
Absolutely. And really honestly, the Healthspan concept is very important in the aging space, right? We have talked about lifespan and longevity for so long, right? But who wants to live 100 years old and be sick and be in poor health? So the idea is really to extend the healthy life years that we're losing. We're losing around 20 to 40 years of healthy living. And so the idea of health span is the time that we have in this planet in a healthy state.
Yeah, I think as David kind of referenced, lifespan is usually kind of framed of live longer, kind of assuming that we're healthy. But what we've experienced is as people live longer on Earth, they experience poorer and poorer health, and for longer periods of time. And so that last 10, 20 years of life can be really quite poor. And so I think scientists have kind of reframed the opportunity and challenge to fundamentally not how do we add years to your life, but how do we add life to your years? And I think that may be for us like the best way to express what we hope to accomplish.
Wonderful. Adding quality to the quantity.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that it's a central focus in aging research at the moment and longevity. We not only want to extend the lifespan, but mostly to extend the length of time an individual lives in good health.
That's really great. I appreciate the framing of what you said, Dr. Seehra, that it's adding, not adding years to life, but adding life to years. I think of my great grandmother lived till she was 99, and really up until that point, she was pretty healthy for being 99 years old. So I've always had that sort of in the back of my mind of, I wonder what the components were that got her to that point. Dr. Furman, can you speak to, does that mean because I have those genes, like, am I set up pretty well? Or is there some way that the choices that I've already made in my life are sabotaging my genes? Maybe another way of asking is what role do genetics play in Healthspan?
It really depends on the research study that has been published, but they range between 10 and 20% of the contribution of genetics to accelerated aging, to inflammation, to longevity, to healthy aging, and the rest. So we're talking about over 80% of that variance comes from lifestyle choices or conditions, social and other exposome determinants of health.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what creates so much interest, excitement, innovation, creativity amongst kind of the scientist community. That if only say up to 20% of your health span, how you experience life, how you feel that you're thriving, in your environment, in the world, with your family and friends, is genetically determined. That means we have a lot of there are a lot of lifestyle choices that can be in our control. I'd start with like your environment. A lot of that has to do with the air you breathe and frankly the water you drink. And so we think a lot about clean air and clean water. We think about certainly like the food that you eat, the nutrition that you consume. Of course, that's top of mind for many people. And things like sleep and stress. And maybe in the old days it was work as hard as you possibly could, but it's becoming much clearer to us that adequate sleep and managing your stress are as important to feeling healthy, living healthy as many of these other factors.
Yeah, I think Paul is doing a great job here in explaining what we have been working on and publishing over the years. We have a Bible for chronic inflammation in the etiology of disease that deals with social, environmental, nutritional determinants of chronic inflammation, which we will explain is at the center of accelerated aging. And so things like environmental and industrial toxins, nutrition, and different social and cultural determinants of low-grade inflammation that are part of our so-called exposome, which is the totality of exposures that a person will experience throughout life.
I didn't get a chance to add that, actually, we're very grateful that Dr. Furman is kind of part of Amway's scientific advisory board. He's kind of a leader kind of in this topic, and he's introduced us to kind of many of these ideas, and I love this idea that he spends kind of so much time on, which he calls kind of the exposome. And the exposome is, as he's kind of indicated, the accumulation of actually many poor lifestyle conditions or choices. And I just want to be intentional in saying that certainly things like environment are not a function of people's personal choice, but those things like poor quality air or polluted air or polluted water or toxins in what we eat or low activity or lots of stress kind of accumulate. He's taught us that accumulates kind of damage in our body that really plays a role in kind of accelerating aging and us not being able to kind of achieve the kind of optimal health span that I think everybody aspires for as they age.
Is it ever too early or too late? Dr. Furman, maybe you can answer this. Is it ever too early or too late in life to pay attention to your health span? Because I'm just learning about this now for the first time.
Not at all. At any time in your life, you can start implementing different interventions that will hopefully extend that period of healthy living and have a good health in those late years. You can also start very early. I have a 13-year-old daughter. I'm trying to convince her to engage in healthy activities and lifestyle choices.
You mentioned that accelerated aging, and one term specifically that you mentioned, Dr. Furman, was chronic inflammation. I hear inflammation, I go, I've heard that word my whole life. And now I'm pausing, I go, John, define that for someone. And I go, red? Can you maybe just break down for all of us who think we know what it means, but you ask us to explain and we're falling short. Can you explain what chronic inflammation is and how that contributes to accelerated aging?
The concept of inflammation is simply the immune response to something foreign, right? We all know about acute inflammation. You cut your finger, it gets red, swollen, warm, and there are well-established measurements that you can have in the blood or in that tissue that are signs of acute inflammation that should resolve in around 7 days and go back to baseline. What we are discussing today is not acute inflammation, it's age-related chronic inflammation. And the triggers are different, the pathways are different, the measurements, the biomarkers are different, and they are causing this concept of accelerated aging that has been associated with a diversity or multiple non-communicable diseases of aging that we're trying to avoid, that we're trying to tackle by preventing, right? By tackling nutrition. And I didn't mention, but there's a list of things that can be avoided. We have a protocol of, like, say, 3 major aspects of this. One is basically elimination of some of these insults. And then we have, or protection, physical and mental challenge, and also harnessing repair mechanisms. And so there's a whole slew of different environmental and social stressors that we can avoid today to extend health span and keep chronic inflammation at bay.
I love kind of what David has kind of taught the Amway science community, and the way I kind of hear the science and kind of learn about the research that he's doing is, essentially the body kind of accumulates a lot of damage over time. It could be, as you mentioned, as simple as too much sun exposure. And you may not experience kind of anything that's happening, but the body is kind of accumulating inflammation. And in a way, that begins to consume the body's kind of time and energy to kind of deal with that. And really what we want to do is, like, think about how the body can repair itself versus kind of accumulate damage. And so we're trying to think about the balance of how to protect yourself, how to be in environments that have cleaner air, cleaner water, protect your skin, make kind of healthier eating choices in a way that frankly allows the body to kind of repair from kind of all the exposures that it experiences kind of in the course of days and weeks and months.
Man, you two are just the perfect people to have here on our first episode of Habits and Healthspan. Everything you were saying, Dr. Seehra, I'm just getting more and more excited for all the deep dives we're going to be making with other guests in the future about all the topics that you mentioned. Cannot wait.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is a really good place to start, right? Because we're sort of making our knowledge broader in this area of health span. And to that end, like, I'm curious, what are, Dr. Furman, some of the latest trends in aging research that we and other consumers should know about? And any emerging breakthroughs that you want to speak to in aging science that affect daily living?
For sure. So there has been longitudinal studies of aging that have followed thousands of individuals. In fact, the Stanford 1000 Immunomes project is one of them. And we have noticed that there are very important determinants of healthy aging, ranging from biomarkers of inflammation that we find in individuals that are unhealthy, that we also have identified in their blood, let's say microplastics, or we know are affected by pesticides or emulsifiers in foods, or let's say air and noise and light pollution. There's a variety of different things that we have identified. One important determinant of healthy aging is actually a sense of community and belonging and having a purpose in life. So it is quite interesting. It is a very much unstudied area that for a long time fell in kind of the pseudoscience umbrella. Now we're looking at biomarkers in the blood that change in response to psychological well-being. So that is absolutely important as well. Other things that I think are very critical to this message is to listeners today is that we don't want to cure aging, right? Aging is not a disease. We want to cure and we want to extend the wellness, the well-being of individuals. And so functional aging is now the centerpiece of our research. And this means we want to maintain function. If I like to go and surf, I would like to be 100 years old and be able to surf. If I like to read books, I want to keep that function as long as possible until my latest days of my life. And so this ties directly into how the WHO is now in the 2022 International Classification of Diseases actually accepted or recognized for the first time that age-related decline in intrinsic capacity, so in functional decline, is now considered as a condition.
I love so much the way that you put that, Dr. Furman, of functional aging. I think maybe an undercurrent that you can kind of feel, as I shared at the beginning, I'm approaching 30 and get kind of a little nervous, a little scared, aging, and I like the way that, yeah, I can't imagine. So I like the way you put it, this is not something to avoid, but something rather to do well, to do with grace, we sometimes say. That was great. In that vein of things kind of losing function, though, as they're getting older, I'm reminded of maybe half a decade or so ago. I'm a rock climber, as I shared, and I rolled my ankle pretty bad. And I got back on it not too much later, and my ankle's now fine. Fast forward a couple years, I hyperextend my knee at a gymnastics place, just sort of messing around. And now I just have a bad knee on sometimes. It's making me think about how we all, as we kind of get a little bit older, that's one of our markers of, yeah, I got the bad elbow now, I got the bad knee. Can you speak, please, to what role bone health, joint health, muscle health plays as we are promoting that healthy aging, that functional aging?
Yes. So the first thing I would like to clarify is that the process of aging is hierarchical. You have commented, John, just now that there's wear and tear and with aging or loss of function, but there are different things that happen before. Molecular changes happen very early in life that will determine cellular changes, which will ultimately cause loss of function in tissues and organs way before any disease ensues. So we're talking about different hallmarks of aging or biomarkers of aging that we can today study and have this beautiful framework to understand what aging means and what are the hierarchical changes. You mentioned bone and muscle health or muscle mass. Muscles are a secretory organ, and there are over 300 anti-inflammatory peptides that are released from muscle. If we're losing muscle, chances are we will be inflamed. And so it's as important as keeping a healthy household with healthy air and clean water and protecting your skin and your microbiome in the gut. Also maintaining a strong routine of strength training is absolutely critical.
I had a chance to kind of hear this idea from David a few months ago, and I I love this idea, which is your your muscles may be more important than you think. And so, David's expression is, and he's kind of taught us that when you're thinking about aging, there's kind of what's happening kind of in the molecules in the cells, and that's kind of invisible to us. And then there's kind of what happens in your tissues and organs, and then it's kind of like what do we feel and experience. And so that's kind of where sometimes we become concerned about aging, but your cells and your tissues and organs may be kind of accelerating way ahead of kind of when you realize it. And I think an example that I love with muscles is, you when you're young, running up and down stairs, my children express no muscle soreness. They don't complain about that. As I've aged, I've noticed when I run up and down stairs, like, yikes, I feel a little sore. Maybe there's an effect for 2 or 3 days. But that feeling young, I think, is kind of what we want. And that's what we desire. And I think that's part of the Healthspan definition, which is not only having great capacity, but being able to kind of rebound. And I think your example of, hey, I've noticed I'm not rebounding as fast as I used to, I think is a great example. Like, holy cow, something may be happening. I may be changing. But these are the early signs that we want to think about and we want to kind of get ahead of.
Well, then it's good we're having this conversation because I want that rebound.
Mm-hmm. Sort of along those same lines then, Dr. Furman, can you walk through how to maintain mobility through the different phases in life?
Yeah, so there are small changes in your life that you can implement day to day that will make the difference. So you may not need a gym. Like, for example, you go for your daily walk, right? And that in itself has a major implication. You can extend your health span by about 10 years just by walking 40 minutes a day. I typically park my car farther away from the grocery shopping because I like to, walk a little bit more and do this idea of the maximum effort law, not the minimum effort law, but the maximum effort law. And that, in many cases will suffice.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I love that, Dr. Furman, because one of the goals of this podcast is to bring it into the everyday, into the practical. And so I'm feeling probably what a couple listeners at home are feeling, going, okay, I can do that. That's something that I can implement for my health span. So thank you so much for bringing it there for us.
I can't believe, I do believe it, but 10 years you can add just by 40 minutes of walking a day. That's incredible.
Yeah, strong data by multiple groups have demonstrated. Some groups are saying, 20 minutes. I believe more the 40-minute walk. And I do it every day. Actually, this morning I went to the beach and I do cold plunge in the beach. So that's another way of keeping ourselves free from inflammation, is to expose our bodies to cold shocks, or cold shock proteins that get activated when we are exposed to cold temperature. And so that's another area of research that we have demonstrated induces repair mechanisms that are well conserved.
Wow. The walking one's a little bit easier for me to accept because I don't love the cold, but from your words or from your mouth, Dr. Furman, I will perhaps consider thinking about those cold shocks.
But this idea that David's talking through, which is if we, and actually kind of why I'm so excited to be here, because I think we want to think about how can we make the science real for people in a way that they can apply to their lives. But I think David has preached small changes, like if you just make small modifications to your environment. David just talked about activity. We think a little more consciously about what we eat. We think a little more intentionally about how we manage stress or sleep a little bit better. We think a little bit more intentionally about skin health. If we do all these things kind of in accumulation, small, tiny, easy changes, it can have not only a big effect on how you may experience life in 20 years, but it may have a big payoff in kind of how you rebound, how much energy you have and the rest of it. So I love this idea, and I love where science is going, where it's kind of teaching us that many kind of changes, kind of concurrently small changes, may end up having a really big effect. This idea that it's clear to me that people want to take their own health and well-being into their own hands. And I think it's, and I know David feels the same way, like it's our responsibility as scientists to find a way to like democratize and simplify science information so we can kind of put it in the hands of people to kind of enable them to be empowered to kind of make the kind of choices that are going to suit their own health and well-being kind of ambitions and where they want to where they want to go, how they want to live. And so yeah, I hope we can do some good in kind of sharing at least what we think we know and how it may translate for everybody.
And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, Healthspan, why Dr. Seehra is here with us today. So amazing. I'm loving all of your answers. It's great.
Yeah, I'm grateful too that we get, I mean, because we're the people that are learning, right? We get to learn from both of you about how we can, like you said, take these things into our hands because we do care. So sort of along those lines, I'm curious now, we've talked a lot about the physical elements of Healthspan, but Dr. Seehra, you just mentioned there are so many additional elements that we haven't talked a lot about yet, and I would like to. Dr. Furman, can you talk a little bit more about perhaps the differences between mental health and emotional health and cognitive health and those elements of Healthspan? Because as Dr. Seehra just mentioned, those play a big role too in what you've been researching and in our overall Healthspan.
We evolved in groups, sharing with our peers, with our families, and today we are facing a very different reality. People are isolated, they're at home, and that drives a level of inflammation. There's a large number of studies in that relationship between loneliness, isolation as one critical social determinant of increased heart disease, for example, in older adults, suicidal tendencies in young kids, high levels of stress are absolutely negative to keep healthy living. And there's been studies, for example, in cancer caregivers that are suffering from high stress levels. And you take the cells from these individuals, they're highly inflamed, and there's really no way to bring that down by different drugs or your other types of compounds. It's really a matter of resetting our mindset and engage in social activities, decrease our levels of social stress, try to enlarge our community and people that we love, get together more often. And so go for a walk with people you really feel engaged with. And it's not just the number of connections, it's the quality of those connections that make the difference.
Yeah, and I think, that's stunning. What David is kind of indicating for us is, if I put it in a different way, your human cells, your organs, your tissue, like if you want that to be less inflamed, in a manner of speaking, like you need close social cohort. You need to be around your human cells need to be around people and people helping people, social community, that social engagement is so important to biological aging. And I think that's kind of a shocking thing. It just kind of shows, and maybe we all kind of intuitively know this coming out of COVID, like the importance of kind of people connecting with people, I would say is like as important as ever, and a major contributor to people kind of feeling and experiencing health and Healthspan in the way I think that most people desire.
And just to add some level of flavor to that, we know the mechanisms, right? So you get depressed or you have high levels of stress. There are hormones and different molecules that are secreted from our brain to our periphery and that increases inflammation. Those are known mechanisms. So this is not in the realm of pseudoscience anymore. We're now identifying the pathways and mechanisms that lead to accelerated aging due to mental health and well-being.
In a time in which digital engagement is at an all-time high, and things like social media are so kind of predominant in our lives, particularly we're talking about our kids, younger people's lives. I would say that that's kind of a tailwind, something we should be cognizant of, that human interactions are, us maintaining and growing human interactions are going to be more important than kind of what we experience kind of with digital tools and devices, and we got to think about, I think, more intentionally how we can enable that for people to live healthy and feel healthy.
So you're saying digital engagement with other humans is not a one-for-one exchange with...
It is not. I think as David kind of pointed out, it's personal connection. It's and personal sharing, and which kind of attributes to kind of what we think about as emotional health and psychological health.
So if we're putting together how we're thinking about all of these other forms of health, I'm thinking earlier about how we were talking about how the body is interacting with aging. Dr. Furman, can you say a little bit about the common things that come with aging in our cognitive function, like memory or just mental sharpness?
Yeah, so there are morphological changes in the brain that you can measure by functional MRI or a CT scan. Generally speaking, the gray matter and white matter volume decreases with age. Luckily, there is quite a lot of variance, right? So then some people have a shrinkage of their brain matter faster than others, right? And those who keep a more voluminous, more healthy brain will have less of a loss of memory and loss of executive function and a loss of capacity. And so you want to be in that upper side of the curve, and not in those that are declining fast. And we know some of the mechanisms are neuroinflammation. So the inflammatory mediators that we have circulating in the body can cross the blood-brain barrier and cause inflammation in the brain that is directly associated with loss of memory and executive function in your brain.
Yeah, and I would say that your cognitive function, your cognitive health kind of ties back to all the things we're talking about. It does have to do with finding a way to be in the healthiest possible environment. Science connections are very clear. Kind of maintaining activity really contributes to cognitive health in a way that's, I think, very important. Sleep, stress, kind of, and the one that I know a lot of people pay attention to is kind of what you eat.
Well, there you have it, straight from the experts. Now, we're not going to let you go just too soon. Here at the end of the podcast, we have a little thing that we're going to be wanting to do with all of our experts, where we bring it right back down into 1, 2, 3 actionable steps that our listeners at home can take. You've been dropping a ton of amazing things, so you can either reiterate that, or this is an opportunity for you to share something that we haven't yet been able to address. But essentially, what are 2 to 3 action steps that we can take with what we've been talking about here today?
How much time do I have? So, yeah, I mentioned 3 different buckets. One is protection, the other one is challenge, and the third one will be repair mechanisms. Protection basically deals with elimination or avoidance of environmental, nutrition, and cultural drivers of systemic chronic inflammation. And we're talking about things like, pesticides. We want to take the healthiest foods, and then hopefully be able to choose those that are not wrapped up in plastics, because we know plastics is a growing concern for aging, for the aging field and research. And then other things like, all these processed foods, we know are so bad and so related directly with accelerated aging and inflammatory biomarkers and so on and so forth. So foods, and that's absolutely critical. And then physical and mental challenge, we touched upon that. Doing and engaging in activities that have to do with social interaction, but also be able to challenge yourself a little bit. Always, like, keep a healthy posture, go walk and do stretching. Stretching is so important. You're also releasing anti-inflammatory mediators when you stretch your muscles. So things like that. And then for those that are more in the biohacking arena, there are more elaborated practices, as I mentioned before, things like cold plunge and sauna has been demonstrated that there are certain proteins that get activated, and so there's a variety of things for different flavors of the individuals. But for the general population, I would just like to wrap up. Keep a healthy diet, stay away from pollutants in the air, in your water systems. It goes from household to workplace to really whole cities that need to be rethought and reframed. And there's a lot of work currently happening in that field of having longevity cities. So you can only imagine how this is important to keep the population healthy. And keep exercise, obviously, and strength training is absolutely critical.
I think, and thank you for having me. I'd say that my time with you and certainly with Dr. Furman, I always learn things myself. And I think let's try to make it as simple as possible. I do think staying active is a big part of kind of us feeling health and being healthy. And I love David's tip on find a way to just walk for 20, 40 minutes a day. That'll have a big payoff. I do for all of our, for all of those that kind of pay attention to science, I want to encourage people to, you don't have to be a scientist to know the science and know how it may apply to your life. And so I'm sure for all those kind of chiming into this podcast, these are people already on the journey of being empowered to kind of take health into their own hands. And I want to encourage people to learn the things you need to learn to take care of your life. And I think the one thing that's really understated when it comes to health is the power of people helping other people, providing positive encouragement, socially connecting, maybe disconnecting from kind of digital ecosystems. I can't tell you how important that is to kind of overall health and well-being.
Well, thank you for being one of those people to us and to all of our listeners at home.
I love that. There's so much we can do, it sounds like. And these are things that are attainable. Both of you have put these concepts into terms that now we can go and implement. And those who are listening also, we talked about at the beginning the genetics thing. And it would seem to me like if you have genetics that are good, I mean, that's great. But also, this is good news for those who maybe don't have the best history in their genes. There's still so much that you can do, like you just said, that will either annoy and make things worse in your body. But there's also things that you can do that really are going to go a long way for your health today and tomorrow and then beyond, right?
That's absolutely right. And we're going to be exploring so many amazing topics in the episodes ahead. I cannot wait to dig into them. And we hope we see all of you listening there. In the meantime, thank you so much, Dr. Seehra, Dr. Furman, for joining us today and sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much. Don't go it alone is what I hear also. So be sure to tune in for our next podcast so that we can together continue learning. Thank you again, Dr. Furman, for being with us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow Amway on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, even though Alyssa's got a head start with her great-grandma's genes,
Thanks, Grandma Helen.
the rest of us got 80 to 90% choices that are all lifestyle. So we'll see you next time.